Hey everybody, welcome to American History with Mr. Finn. Today we are continuing to look at the change of culture, the change of the Northeast and the Midwest now as far as industrialization goes, but really about the culture, not about capitalism and the things that we have been talking about, but actual culture itself. We looked at the second wave of immigration, so we have a lot more people coming into this country. Cities are starting to expand, and well, let's say this: they're not trying. I mean, they are expanding, but they're expanding upwards, getting a lot of people packed in together. And what we see in this is we start to see some new ideas. And one of the big ideas as we get into the 1900s that's going to pop up is, I think it all kind of goes together cyclically in a cycle over and over and over again. And this is what it is. We see this. We see more people. As I said, the second wave of immigration, we have more people. This is new ideas, and this is going to be city-based. City new ideas. If you lived in the country, you probably still did stuff the same way you always did. But in the city, we start to have new ideas. So we get a lot more people. And as I said before, a lot of these people are coming in from all over different places in Europe, a lot of different languages coming together. There's segregation within cities and different neighborhoods within cities. But at the end of the day, as I did say last time, the number of people are going up, which means if you're a company or a factory, there's workers everywhere. You can pay them nothing. And so there's more people. But what happens with more people means that the people who are working in jobs get less money. The poor increase. The number of poor people is going to increase. One, they're coming in, they don't know the language, they can't get a job, they're poor because they don't have a job, don't have money to buy things. They're cramped into small places. The rent for apartments is going sky high. And so we see this gap between like the really, really rich business owners and then the working class people who are really poor in these cities, living in slums. There is not efficient, meaning there's not very good like sewage systems. So in these areas, there's a lot of disease and pollution. And if you don't have stuff and you are struggling, eventually in these areas you're going to see an increase of crime. So there's an increase of crime, gang activity, things of that nature happen in this idea because these new city, one of the new city ideas, we're going to get to it, is leading in this direction. So we get a lot more people. The people don't have a lot of money, so the number of poor people is going to increase, leaving us to have only one solution. How do I get money to survive? I turn to a life of crime. Crime rates go up. Again, in cities you are living in, there's crazy crime, pollution increase, disease, all of that stuff. Not a very good picture if you're an immigrant living in one of these major cities. It's like a lot of people were struggling during this time period. Another thing that happens when you have these issues is you see depression and emotional needs are not being met, and a lot of people turn to, this is going to lead us to our new ideas, increase, you're going to see I'll say alcohol drug use starts to increase because people turn to those, to help them forget about their problems or whatever else, leading to a very negative scene. And one of the ideas that comes out of this is we're going to see it as we get to around the 1920s, something called prohibition. Prohibition means alcohol is illegal. Alcohol will become illegal as we get in to the 19 teens and into the 20s, this idea starts to pick up. And why does that pick up? Follow our cyclical idea. The poor people increase, the number of crime rates increase. You don't have a job, you're poor, you turn to alcohol. Alcohol leads to all sorts of different issues. People will start to blame alcohol for, domestic abuse at home, and children being out on the street, and the dad not coming home, and not taking care of the family, and alcohol people will be convinced that alcohol is the issue at hand, and so we are going to see prohibition making alcohol illegal as we get going. That's a new idea. Another new idea. We're only doing two new ideas. One idea is prohibition. We did talk about this a little bit with I want to say the 1800s, but it's going to gain a lot of steam here. The suffrage movement starts to pick up. Suffrage movement is this. Women vote. A novel idea. Women can vote. It's crazy to think women didn't have the right to vote even in the 1900s. And it's going to pick up steam in these cities where you're going to see, this new way of living where you go to a factory and get money and you get a paycheck. And a lot of times women had to work as well. There was factories that were women might be seamstresses who would work in linen factories, but they would get money. And they had a more of a sense of freedom because of it. I have my own money. I worked for my money. I am doing the same thing as men are doing. Why don't, follow the cycle, why don't I get the right to vote like men do? And so these new ideas are starting to gain steam as we get into the 1900s. The idea of prohibition, the idea of the suffrage movement. And so by the time we get to, it's almost a bang-bang play, 1919, 1920, we start to see prohibition and suffrage movement hit at the almost exact same time. All about this new culture that is developing because of industrialization and the life that these people are living. Now, this is the last thing we're talking about today, because we're just doing a little bit of the change of culture and what a life was like for these people, is let's get rid of these things. We start to see activities. New activities start to pop up. There's new things that people can do. Now, if you remember, if you worked on a farm, you would work all day. You had to work all the time. You were working. It was a hard life. Now you work in a factory. In a factory, at the end of the week, at the end of 2 weeks, you get a paycheck. There it is. Go to the bank. Now I have money. I also have shifts that I work. Meaning I don't work all day. I might work, 6 days a week, and I have 1 day off. I have a day off. That never happens on the farm, in agriculture and things like that. Guess I'm just sitting around. You're always doing something. So this idea of leisure time, for example, spare time and time off is going to lead to new activities. We start to see this. Sports. Today, people watch sports. People participate in sports. There's a huge market for sports, and we have sports heroes and all of that stuff. This is where it's really going to pick up steam and begin. People have spare time, and sports are going to be created. The three major sports of the time. One is horse racing. One is baseball, America's pastime, and horse racing, basketball, and any guesses? Starts with a B. Boxing, one of the oldest of sports. Mano y mano, one person versus one person. Boxing like this. And people would go to watch these sports. So you start to see the creation of sporting events and people going. They would pay a very little amount, and they would then be able to watch these events, and that's what they might do on their downtime. You're going to start to see an increase of newspapers. Newspapers increasing. Why do newspapers increase? You might not think the news is super exciting. Maybe you do. But this would, it's, it doesn't sound great. It's another something to do, and on top of that, something to do that you get info, you get information, you get stories about people. The newspapers are going to tell you about certain things happening around the world. This is, to the people living at the time, this is big. You know, today, pick up your phone, click, click. I can see anything at any time. I know what's happening all over the place. If you were someone living in one of these cities, the newspaper was your, connection to any story happening. It would give you that information. You would be entertained by that information. Something else that's going to happen. You're going to get, they're called vaudeville shows, let's just say this. Plays increase. So if you've ever been to a play, you would know that you go to a theater and you watch people on stage and they put on a performance. The shows at this time would be, think of them as like sketch comedy shows where like someone would come and do something and they do it for like, 2 or 3 minutes and then they'd be like, yay, and then the next event someone would be like juggling, and then the next one someone's tap dancing, and it would be a show that would have a number of things happening at it. But again, it's all something to do. For these people now, they have spare time. They have leisure time. They can go to the plays. They can go to vaudeville shows. They can go to theater. They're reading more. Newspapers are getting created. More stories. Got to get the big stories. Sports events are happening, all of which is changing our culture. This did not exist before. Music, that's another big thing. You start to see, and this is interesting too, you have music, ragtime. You might be more familiar with the term or have heard the term jazz. Ragtime and jazz music is a type of music, and this is going to come out of the African Americans who have now been, freed after the Civil War for, years now, and now they're making their way to the North, and they're going to have a real impact on this place. So, on that note, please get me these notes today for participation and attendance purposes, and I will see you next class.